Hi, my name is Pam Nelson, and this is Weekly Wake Up. This week's Weekly Wake Up is a little bit from last week's where we did the jumpings. This week, instead of jumping, we're going to imagine that we can't let one foot leave the floor, that one foot has to stay kind of glued to the floor. Now, it doesn't have to be the whole sole of the foot. You can just be on the ball of the foot. So it gives us some practice in, pivoting. Sometimes we're we turn in a yoga pose. We can cut the foot in, but sometimes we can pivot, on the ball of the foot to turn the foot, maybe the front foot, maybe the back foot. So getting that pivoting action of rotating not just the foot, but from the thigh bone can be useful. And I kind of built it off a little the idea of basketball. At some point in basketball, you're allowed to keep dribbling the ball, you're allowed to hold the ball, but you're not allowed to take any steps. And you're trying to keep the ball away from, other players so they don't take your ball. So you have to have one foot on the floor as you make other movements. So it's a little bit on that idea, which will tie into a new class that I'm hoping to start in April, Yoga for Sports, based on B.K.S. Iyengar's book, Yoga for Sports. That's on holistic health and healing. So we will start in our mountain pose, okay? And I'm going to keep my right foot glued to the floor to start, and I'll be able to step just the left foot. So right foot glued down, we'll go to the side and come back. We'll go forward and back, stepping back. Let's do it again. Hi, my name is Pam Nelson, and this is Weekly Wake Up. This week's class is built a little bit on last week's. Last week it was kind of the jumpings. This week, instead of jumpings, we're going to maybe do similar poses or similar actions, but with the idea that one foot isn't able to leave the floor. So for example, if my right foot was glued down, I can move around any which way, up and down, go forward, back, but that right foot has to remain glued in on that spot. Okay, and then of course we'll repeat with the left. So standing in mountain pose, see that you have enough room, and maybe we'll just turn to the side so I don't hit the wall behind me from our mountain pose. And I'm holding a block. I find it helps a little bit with that core stability when you're holding the brick in. You kind of keep a little bit more connected to the core. And I guess, we'll be playing around a little bit that idea as if you were holding a basketball, right? In basketball, when you've taken all the steps you can hold the ball and you try to keep it away from other players. And you have to keep one foot glued on the spot. Okay. So I'm going to turn to the side. Standing in mountain pose, and I'm going to step forward. This time I'll kind of bend that back knee and come back up, and then stepping back. Maybe you want to raise the arms overhead. We can even go out to the side, can go to a side lunge, can have the brick overhead, can have the elbows bent, then maybe we come around, pivot on that back foot, we can turn it into Virabhadrasana 1, looking up, bring the block back in, pivoting, we'll turn, now the back foot becomes the front becomes the back, Virabhadrasana 1, and then we'll come back up. Mountain pose, and I'm facing the other way, and we'll repeat that. So I'm stepping forward and back, and maybe when you step forward and back, you keep the block in. And when you come up, you raise the arms up. You can, switch that up. And then instead of a diagonal forward, I'll do that diagonal back. I have to pivot the heel out, turn the front leg, can still come, and this one maybe instead of Virabhadrasana 1, or we can go from Warrior 1, bring the block down, hand to the floor, straighten the front leg. We can come into a Pravrita Trikonasana, revolve triangle pose. And staying down low, right? Staying down low, we can change front leg becomes the back becomes the front, and we can come into our Pravrita Trikonasana. And then we can step back up and even be facing, a different direction, facing forward now. So we'll play around with that idea. I'm going to now switch, keeping now my left foot glued to the floor. So that I have enough room, I don't hit the wall. And now left foot to the floor, I'm able to move my right leg, okay? So instead of stepping forward and back, I'm going to step out to the side and back, and then pivot. Okay, so we're pivoting, maybe you're pivoting back. Maybe you're pivoting the other way. And then we'll come back, mountain pose. So now with that pivot, we'll turn it into another standing pose. We'll come just into triangle pose. Okay, so if I step right foot out, I'm pivoting the back heel out a little bit. Okay, I'll just move so you can see, pivoting back heel out a little bit and cutting the front leg out, coming into Utthita Trikonasana. Coming up, we'll go the other side. So you just pivot on the feet, and that front leg becomes the back becomes the front. Utthita Trikonasana. We'll come back up and step back in. So, you can play around a lot of ways with that idea. Let's maybe do a couple of more. From here, if I was to step forward again, but keep now the back leg straight. So the first time we bent the knee, keep the back leg straight. We could come Virabhadrasana 1, come down to Pravrita Trikonasana. I'm keeping the hand to the inner foot. I'm just going to move so you can see. Of course, you could bring the block or hand to the outer foot. We could come into a side angle pose, Pravrita, Parsvakonasana. Staying down really low, so kind of Prasarta Padottanasana, staying down low. So we go all the way to the other side. So it's again that pivoting on the toes. Staying down low, getting that softness, and still keeping the left foot pinned down. Straighten the front leg. We can come into our Pravrita Trikonasana. And that front knee, come into our revolved side angle pose. And then we come back up, pivoting, stepping back to mountain pose. Hi, my name is Pam Nelson, and this is Weekly Wake Up. This week's class is based a little bit off of last week's class, where we were kind of doing different poses, turning different ways, more with jumping. This week, we're going to imagine that one foot has to stay glued to the floor. Kind of that idea of, a basketball, you're holding the ball, you take the steps that you're allowed, you still have the ball, and you're trying to keep it away from other players from taking the ball from you, and you're really only allowed to pivot on one foot. You can't even change which foot you're pivoting on. And in yoga poses, we often need to have that mobility to kind of turn the foot, pivot on the foot, to turn the thigh bone, either the front leg, sometimes even the back leg. Okay, so we can go side to side. Okay, so that will be a little bit what we play with today. We'll start in mountain pose. See that you have enough space around you. Okay, I'm going to step a little bit forward just so I don't hit the wall behind. From our mountain pose, I'm going to step 1 foot forward. I'm bending the back knee to start, raising the block up, or your ball, if you even have a basketball at home, you can use that ball. And I find holding something, connects a bit more to the core. We get that movement in, the core, okay? So then we'll step back. We'll step the leg we had forward back and bring the block down. You might add a little bit of a twist. We'll come back to standing. So let's repeat that again. We're going forward and bring the block down. Maybe add a little bit of a twist and then stepping back, bring the block down. Add that little bit of a twist as you squeeze the block, the hands into the block. And then we'll come back. This next time as we step forward, I'm just going to move this foot just so that you can see the front leg. Step forward, we'll keep the back leg straight this time. Okay, back leg straight and bend the front knee. Can raise the blocks. So we're in Virabhadrasana 1. We come down. We could add, that twist. Maybe bring the forearm to the thigh and squeeze the block. Keep adding that twist from the lower waist, lower ribs. And then we'll come back up. You can step back. I'm going to step forward just so my heel doesn't hit the wall. And now I'm going to step that front, which was the front leg back. Now it becomes the back leg, bend the knee, Virabhadrasana 1. Block comes down, begin to turn. So there's a little bit of a pivoting that needs to happen on that back leg even. Forearm to the thigh. This is, a modified revolved side angle pose. We can push that block. Feel the lower abdomen move in and up, kind of scooping in that lower abdomen. And then coming back, and we can step the front foot forward. Okay, so now we'll repeat that, imagining the other foot is now glued to the floor. So we can step forward and back and forward. Coming forward, back leg remaining straight. So that Virabhadrasana 1, maybe coming down. Maybe you can get the elbow now to the other thigh. Okay. So you might find you need to adjust your stance here a little bit. Outer elbow to the thigh, pressing the block. Maybe you make the block a little bit more narrow. And this time, instead of stepping the foot back to center and back, we'll pivot and repeat. So the front leg becomes the back, that becomes the front. Maybe we can get the elbow to the outer knee as we press. That revolved side angle pose. We come back, and then we can step back, and now we've turned in a different direction. So we can also change, we are in our space. I'll go out to the side, come back, diagonal, so that we're pivoting on that one foot. Come back to mountain pose. Okay. Well, there's just a couple more. Of course, like the last week, you could play around and really do all sorts of combinations. Okay. I'm going to imagine my other foot now tethered to the floor, and I'm going to step out at a diagonal. So the back leg is how it usually is in the standing poses. In, say, a warrior 1, when both hip bones are facing forward. Now I'll bring the block, opposite hand to foot to the floor. I'm going to keep the block, I'll just adjust so you can see, the block to the inner foot to extend to come now into a variation of Paritta Trikonasana. Bend that front knee, we could come up and over, so I'm pivoting, changing the block to the other hand, so you come in, feel that connection, opposite hand to foot, Paritta Trikonasana. Coming back, we can come through center, so you're wide, we turn in and step back. Right, so we can come up all sorts of different things. We could come even triangle pose, could step out. Now I'm pivoting, front leg, triangle pose. Coming up, pivoting, so the back foot becomes the front becomes the back. I could slide the block between the legs, come through center, come around, come back through center, into more of a Prasarta Padottanasana. Keeping the sitting bones in line with the back of the heels, you might be able to reach between the legs. Palms can come to the floor beyond the block, crown of the head towards the floor. We'll come back. So now we're heel toeing just that one foot in because we have to keep the other one exactly where it is and come back to standing. So of course you could do, again, the balancing poses. If now we'll change which foot's glued down. I could come into a Vriksasana, tree pose. And maybe from there, stepping forward, maybe seeing if we can come back, stepping back, seeing if we can come back. We could come into a hand to foot pose, Parsva Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana. Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana to the front, back to mountain pose. Change which foot's glued down. And start in our Vriksasana. And come forward. See if we can come back. Stepping back. From our tree pose, you can see if we can stay balanced to extend. And come forward. And back to mountain pose. Okay, let us do one more before we end for today. Again, you can play around and maybe send me some of your videos of what you've come out with this idea. Just don't want to make the videos too long. So this next one, I'm going to pretend my block is a ball, and I'm going to step out, staying down low, as if you kind of had this bouncing ball, has to come around, right? Come around, come through, maybe big figure 8 a few times, going behind the legs, maybe the opposite direction. And really get that core moving in. If you're kind of taking, the ball away, you don't have to be forceful in the body, but you get that exhale, getting that ball away, and then step the other way, and to get some movement going up. That you're protecting, the ball to go around. We'll try with the other foot pin down. Okay. So if you dribble it a little bit, we have to kind of then protect the ball. Stepping back, bringing it all the way around, right? Up and around, and then back to mountain pose. Okay, well, I hope you had some fun with that today, and